So, what constitutes contemporary literature? I've been struggling a little bit lately with the word contemporary. This has arisen for me most recently in the context of considering contemporary literature. That sublime deposit of all human knowledge, Wikipedia, defines contemporary literature as follows. Contemporary literature is literature with its setting generally after World War II. I really don't want to have to keep saying that word contemporary. It's very difficult. I keep tripping over it. But note in the Wikipedia definition of contemporary literature, this speaks of literature that has its setting after World War II. So, presumably, by this definition, an historical novel that's published today is not contemporary literature. This seems a little odd and probably conflates two ideas. The first idea is that contemporary literature must deal with contemporary events. The second idea is that it must have been written within a certain time frame. I vote that we ignore the first idea and focus on the second. According to the first definition, Aldous Huxley's Brave New World, which was published in 1932 but set in the year 2540, would be contemporary literature, while Peter Carey's True History of the Kelly Gang, which was published in 2000 but set back in the 1860s, 70s, 80s, would not be contemporary literature. This is clearly nonsense. Carey's book is clearly a contemporary take on historical events. So, adopting the second criterion, namely that contemporary literature is literature written after World War II, this provides us with about, an 80-year window or so, within which a literary work can be considered contemporary. Oddly enough, if we look up the definition of contemporary French literature, we find that this is defined as French literature from the year 2000 to the present. So the French, it seems, have much smaller windows. The word contemporary contains within it implicitly, explicitly, a certain withness. An event or a person is contemporary with another event or person. It doesn't primarily mean modern or during the present era, although it appears to have this derived meaning nowadays. But Shakespeare, for example, was contemporary with Marlowe, although neither of them is contemporary in this derived sense, meaning that neither of them is contemporary with me. They don't overlap my timeline, although they do overlap each other's times. I think we can see, therefore, that contemporary is a relative term. Any writer whose timeline overlaps mine is my contemporary. If we assume that the average lifespan today is around maybe 80 years, at least in our affluent Western societies, then it seems reasonable to argue that anything written during the last 80 years or so is contemporary. A reasonable number of us were alive at that time, 80 years ago. So the actually 79 years since the end of the Second World War is just about right. We can only assume that the French lived very brief lives. The concept of modern is also quite interesting in literature. Sometime during the 1960s, literature managed to become somehow postmodern. So what came before that was presumably modern, which is odd, to say the least, since postmodern literature is clearly more modern than modern literature. Headspin. Oh, and just as an aside, if I knew how, I would have introduced some kind of effect here. If there is an effect when you see this, then I guess I worked it out. Otherwise, I guess not. I hope, at the very least, that we can extend the concept of contemporary literature a little further back than the year 2000, or as a book that was published last Monday, just so last week. Maybe I'm just getting old, but at least I don't have to say contemporary again.